to join the Zoom. I will admit them to the waiting room as we get going. So I'm going to start a presentation. So first, thank you all for attending this evening's virtual training session. We're really excited to have another great season. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was our agenda. Topics we'll be reviewing. We'll be going over first some Osprey natural history, some things you might not know about the ecology of Osprey. And then we'll get into a program overview and history, the background of our program and how we got to where we are today. And then we will get into the nuts and bolts of monitoring. We'll talk about collecting observations, the specific behaviors we're looking for out in the field, and we'll talk about how to submit our observations online. We submit our data through an online portal. That's a little different this year for those of you who are returning. And then we will talk about nest selection, figuring out which nests that we will be monitoring during the season. And then we will have a little bit at the end to talk about how to submit new nests if you happen to be out monitoring and find any nests, how to get those out into our database. And then we will have plenty of time for questions and open discussion. So please save all questions for the end. If you do have a question, you can put it in the chat function, and I will read through all of those at the end. We won't leave here tonight until all questions are answered. So we'll start with some natural history of the osprey. So osprey are fairly long-lived birds. They live between 15 and 20 years, which is pretty long when you think about many of our songbirds that you may see, at your feeder may only live between 2 to 5 years. So they're pretty long-lived. And they live on all continents on Earth except for Antarctica. Wherever you go in the world, all osprey, they're actually all the same species. So in the family of osprey, there's only one species, the osprey. And kind of a funny anecdote I like to share during these trainings is when I was in college, I went to URI and I was doing a study abroad. I was in Bali in Indonesia, and we were staying on a boat for a few days, and I saw a bird that looked just like an osprey. So I asked our guide, what is that bird? It looks just like an osprey that we have in America. And he said, it's an osprey. And I just want to remind folks who are joining us, just make sure your microphones are muted, just so so we don't have any residual noise. Thank you. And also with osprey, they're a very strong bird. They can fly when holding a fish that is up to half their own body weight. Osprey typically weigh anywhere between 5 to 8 pounds. They're actually fairly light, a lot lighter than many people expect. So they can carry fish that are between half and 4 pounds in weight. And again, just reminding folks to mute our microphones. I know we hear a little bit of beeping from someone. I think you might have to change the batteries in your fire alarm. Smoke detector, I mean. And also, osprey, they mate for life, but they do migrate independently, meaning that they will, like swans, very famously mate for life. But actually, at the end of the osprey season, when they start to head south, which is about end of August, early September, the males and females will leave without their mate, and they actually leave their young behind as well. And the fledglings will have to find their way down to South America on their own. And they're very quick flyers. They can fly between 20 to 40 miles per hour, but they can actually hit 80 miles per hour when diving to catch a fish. And they also have broad habitat use, meaning that you can see osprey in all sorts of different habitats. We see them in urban areas. I live up here in Providence, and we have a number of osprey nests. We see them in rural areas and some inland communities in Rhode Island. We see a lot by the coast. If you live, by the water. I'm sure you're very familiar with how osprey like groups of houses, trees, nest poles, salt marshes, and actually in the inland United States, you can often find them cliffs, trees, by lakes, and large rock spires as well. And folks, before we get going to our next section, I'm just going to see if I can mute the microphone.
Recording in progress.
Folks who are joining, just remember to mute your microphones. Let's see. Is there a way to mute us all at once?
Donald Bolio, please mute.
I did.
Thanks, folks. I had to recruit a little help from my girlfriend here to show me how to mute all. We are all set. Let me get back to our slides. And also, I like to share, this is a great photo taken by Marge Peppercorn, who's a volunteer of ours. I'm not sure if she is here with us this evening. It was a great photo she took, actually showing the differences between male and female osprey. We have the male here on the left. It has a very plain breast, is a great way to tell. And the females on the right, and these are for adult osprey. You see, she has kind of this brown necklace. And also, it's kind of hard to tell in this picture, but the females are often larger than the males. On average, the females are about 20% bulkier than the male osprey. So now we talked about some osprey natural history, and now let's get into, the history of our own program. So this program was actually founded in 1977 by the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, also known as RIDEM or RIDEM, and Audubon began management in 2010. And this is because the DEM passed on the management of this program to us because of our great, robust team of volunteers like all of yourselves. But unfortunately, osprey numbers had declined across America due to DDT pollution. DDT was a common pesticide used from about 1940 through 1970. You may be familiar with this from famous naturalist Rachel Carson and her book Silent Spring. And DDT had an impact not just on birds, but on many different wild animals and wild plants as well. So prior to the 1940s, when DDT was really used broadly, there were actually 1,000 nesting pairs of osprey in southern New England. And we define that as everywhere between New York City and Boston, Massachusetts. However, between 1940 and 1970, this number dropped to only 109. And in Rhode Island, by that time, we only had about 13 pairs of osprey left. So when this program started, it was really just a DEM staff and maybe a couple volunteers to monitor this, baker's dozen of nests. And I like to share these photos of DDT application. This is a photo from the city of Waco, Texas, perhaps. And we see these gentlemen here. They aren't wearing any PPE, no gloves, no masks, and they're spreading large clouds of this DDT. Or we see it spread by airplane. Or this is a photo, it's actually in my history textbook when I was in high school. It's a little low resolution. But this is a photo, this is on a beach, and these young boys are actually running through this cloud of DDT as these gentlemen are spraying it. And this was an advertisement for farmers. DDT is good for me. We see, pets, animals, people, livestock, produce, because everyone thought this was a great way to get rid of pests, but at the time didn't know the consequences it would have on nature. So specifically, how does DDT affect osprey? So after rain events, those DDT residues would enter our waterways. We saw those large clouds. So as rain would run off surfaces, it would take a little bit of that residue and eventually enter our waterways through runoff. And then fish consume DDT through respiration and are then consumed by osprey. An osprey's diet is 99.999% fish. It's very rare that you'll see them eat anything that is not a fish. And DDT exposure would actually lead to eggshell thinning. This wasn't just in osprey, but in many birds. And what would happen was when they lay eggs, the shells were so thin that even just incubation could break the eggs and crush them. And also DDT would lead to outright poisoning in these birds. But fortunately, due to many conservation efforts, DDT was banned by the federal government in 1972. So where does that leave osprey? And that is, we actually get to the good news. I promise that's the end of our dire story. We do have good news tonight. And that is the osprey population is growing across the country. As of 2024, there are 1,039 active osprey nests in Connecticut and Rhode Island alone, meaning that we have more osprey nests now than we did before DDT was widely used. Oh, I guess I have to admit one more person. And then 313 of these active nests are right here in Rhode Island, which begs the question, which is how do we know this? And this is where we come in. So the goals of our program, our goals are to keep an active record of all osprey nests in Rhode Island, to document the breeding success of osprey. So we want to know at the end of the season how many young birds hatched and survived to the end of the season, and how does that compare to previous years. And we also want to be the voice for the osprey. You know, we want to stick up for osprey conservation. So now what I want to talk about is observing activity. When you go out into the field to monitor your chosen nest or group of nests, these are the different activities that you are going to be looking to identify when you visit your nest. So we actually start our monitoring on the week of Monday, April 21st through Sunday, August 24th. So about 4 months of osprey monitoring. And during this period, you'll visit your nest or group of nests for at least 5 to 10 minutes per visit. But the longer the visit, the better the data. And, you know, let's say I go to one of my nests and the birds aren't there. You know, I don't have to wait until the birds show up for me to leave. You know, sometimes they're out to lunch, as it were. But anyway, at least 5 to 10 minutes per visit during this period. And if you are going to travel, of course, you know, many folks take summer vacations. Just email me and let me know, and we'll make sure that that nest is monitored. And an important note is no drones. I know drones are becoming more and more popular these days for photography and all sorts of uses, but drones can be very negatively impactful to osprey and many other birds. So please, no drones. So here are the following activities that we're looking for. And the first is resting and roosting. A great photo by Christine Benson. Chris, if you're here, thank you for these great photos. So this is down, I believe, at Trustham Pond in South Kingstown, an area many of us birders are very familiar with. And we see their large nest here. And resting and roosting is just the hanging out activity. This is one you'll probably see very, very frequently through the entire season. We see the bird just hanging out near the nest. And for the rest of the activities, we're going to kind of go through these in kind of a chronological order. The activities you might expect to see earlier in the season versus kind of later in the season. So the next activity, which you may already be seeing from some of your local osprey, is nest building. So osprey, they have very high nest site fidelity, which really means each year they're coming back to the same nest. They love to nest on the exact same spot, even if their nest had been taken down or maybe blew down over the winter. They will rebuild typically in that same spot. And like I said, they're very strong flyers. So we see here this bird carrying a very large branch. So we may see some nest building this time, and you may see it, throughout the season if they need to make some repairs after those summer storms we get. And then, of course, male bringing the food to the female. We can't have young osprey without a little courtship. And typically, the males do the majority of the foraging for the pair. This isn't all the time, but it's most typical. This is also a very important activity for courtship. Even before they lay eggs or mate, the males bring the foods for the females to try and impress her with a very nice fish. And then, of course, copulation and breeding. We can't have young osprey without copulation and breeding. This is typically a very short process, around 10 seconds for these birds. The male mounts the female, as we see in the photo here. And in past trainings, you may have heard me say that, this is a little bit of a rarer activity to see. And that was just from my own experience. I had not observed this behavior when I was out monitoring. But many monitors quickly proved me wrong, as in the beginning of the season, they found that they were seeing this many times and sending many photos of this activity to my email. So thank you to those of you who shared those photos with me. They're very enlightening. And upon doing more research, I found that osprey, even though it's a very quick activity for them, they do this incredibly frequently to make up for the short duration. So anyway, the next activity we will see is incubation. And incubation is it probably is the most difficult activity to identify. And that's because how do we know if a bird is just sitting in the nest or if it's sitting in the nest on eggs? So there's a couple ways that we can try and infer this. The first is the fact that osprey nests are bowl-shaped. Typically, the eggs are laid in the deepest part of that bowl. So if we see an osprey like this, where we can only see its head poking out, it might be sitting on eggs because, the rest of its body is covered up. We can't quite see, and it may be in that deepest part of the nest. But, that's just kind of a maybe. A really great way to tell is, let's say we see a bird like this, sitting in the nest. We're not sure if it's on eggs or not, but let's say, its partner, either the male or female, comes in and they switch spots very quickly. That is a great way to tell there's incubation, because that means these birds are on eggs because they want constant coverage on these eggs. They don't want a second where they're exposed to the elements. And then, of course, a couple weeks later, we start to see nestlings. And thank you, Jim, for the great photo if you're here. And we see these little nestlings, little brown, but they still have their black mask. They don't always peek out like this. This is a really great photo to show it. But sometimes they're real curious about the world. Sometimes they want to hang out deeper in the nest for safety. But they are very small and they really camouflage well too. Oh, and this is a great photo by Butch Lombardi. Some of you may know Butch. I don't think he's here this evening. It's a great photo that shows the difference in the eye color of young birds versus adult birds. So the young birds, this is a nestling right here, has a deep orange color eye. And even when the nestlings grow up and become fledglings, meaning, they're like the young adults, they still have that deep orange colored eye. When adult osprey, mature osprey, have a bright, bright yellow eye. That kind of goes into the next thing, which is fledglings. As I said, when nestlings grow up, they become fledglings. And thank you, Bonnie, for this great, great photo. So this is an adult osprey, likely one of the parents of these two on the sides. We have this adult osprey in the middle, and a couple ways to tell an adult versus a young bird. The first I like to go to are the wings. The adult osprey have sleek, uniformly dark wings. When the young, we see this guy here on the side, they kind of have speckled wings. That's because each of their feathers has a light tip. I kind of like to describe this as almost like a salt and pepper pattern. And again, the dark orange eye on the fledgling versus the bright yellow eye, the adult, is a great way to tell. And the adults feeding the young, so the fledglings don't learn to hunt until kind of really towards the end of the season. So the adults will actually feed both the uh, nestlings and the fledglings. And what's really interesting about this is, as I said, the males typically do the majority of the hunting. They'll actually bring in the fish, give it to mama bird there, and she will tear off chunks and give it to the young. So now we're going to talk about submitting nest observations online. The first, and I'm very, very excited to announce that this is our first year partnering with Osprey Watch. So Osprey Watch is a global monitoring program. They monitor nearly 7,000 nests worldwide with over 1,000 volunteers. And it's overseen by the Center for Conservation Biology at the College of William and Mary. And the reason we're doing this is so we can contribute our Rhode Island data to Osprey research all over the country and all over the world. And this will be a learning experience for all of us. We're going to go through all of the steps for setting up an account and submitting data. And I do want to tell you all this Zoom meeting is recorded. I'll be sending out the recorded version to everybody just so we all have it. So, if you don't write anything down, that's all right. If you don't remember exactly how to do everything, that's all right. It'll be recorded for us. And also, I'll show you towards the end, Osprey Watch has a few quick videos on, how to do everything as well. So we'll get right into it. I like to show, this is the nest map on Osprey Watch of all the osprey nests they monitor all over the world. And we see that most of the nests they monitor are in the US, with a few in Central Asia, the Middle East. It looks like one in Australia, which is pretty neat. And this isn't necessarily where all osprey nests are, but this is where all of the nests that they know of are. So I know for a fact there's many osprey nests in Scandinavia and as well as Great Britain and the United Kingdom. Let's zoom in on the United States. We see most of the monitoring is done along the eastern seaboard, especially us here in the Northeast, with a number of nests all throughout the middle of the country, as well as the West Coast. Last year, I actually went on a trip to Oregon. A friend of mine moved from Smithfield here all the way to Portland, Oregon, and we were doing a lot of hiking, and we saw many osprey along the Columbia River. It was, great to see those Pacific coast ospreys. But then we zoom in on Rhode Island, and this is the Osprey Watch record of Rhode Island nests. According to their records, there's only one osprey nest in Rhode Island. But let's put that side by side with our record, where we monitor over 400 nests and we said 313 of those were active last year. So we see, there's a huge blind spot in their data. So collaborating with them helps them get a much better picture of not just Rhode Island, but of New England as a whole. So now let's get into how to use Osprey Watch. First, you will go to www.ospreywatch.org. And this is what the page will look like. And the first thing you will need to do actually is to create an account. And you do that, you'll click this button here in the red circle that says Join Us. When you click that, it will ask you to create your account. You'll put your first name and last name. So for me, I put Lincoln Dark. A nickname. Please keep this appropriate. I know I don't have to tell this group normally. We do have a few teenagers that often monitor with their folks. And, both many of them are mature. Sometimes, I'm a little skeptical of the younger kids. So, this will be publicly visible. So please keep your nickname appropriate. The email address that you'd like associated with this, this won't be visible to the public. So your email address will be private. Then you will set up a password. And then this, enter the characters, and you see in the image above is just a little security measure. It's just to keep out spam, bots, AI, and that from clogging up the Osprey Watch system. So once you enter in all of your information, you'll click sign up, and it will say thank you for signing up, and it will also ask you to check your email. Your new email or your new account has been created. You will need to validate your email address. This is just to make sure that you are a real person. And then when you go to your email, this is what it will look like. So in this case, it says, Dear Lincoln, you have created an account on the Osprey Watch website. Please verify your email address by clicking the activation link below. So you will click Activate Account right there in the red circle. When you do that, it will bring you to now your personal dashboard of Osprey Watch. So our next goal is now we have to join the Rhode Island Osprey Monitoring Program group. I set up this group, and the Center of Conservation Biology made me our group admin. So, I'll be able to go through all of our data, still for Audubon publications, and manage all of our membership. So to join our group, what you will do is you first have to go to this button along the top that says Explore. And this will bring you to that map we were looking at earlier. And you'll have to go to Explore Monitoring Groups. And here it will show you all of the groups that are on Osprey Watch. And this map, you don't have to worry about as much. All these shapes, these are actually the geographic extents of other monitoring programs. For example, this one here in the middle would be the Colorado Osprey Monitoring Program. They monitor all over their state, especially along the rivers. We have, I'm not quite sure what this would be, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Northern Indiana here, along the Great Lakes, and they really vary in size. So for us, ours is quite small, but to get to our group, you'll have to scroll down on this page. You'll scroll down, and we're towards the bottom because we're a newer group. It will say Rhode Island Osprey Monitoring Program. What you'll have to do is click on that button, and it'll bring you to our group's page. As you see now, what sticks out, it says 19 nests. That's because those are the 19 I added manually at the time of creating this training. We're still waiting on their webmaster to upload the rest of our nests. I sent them all of our data with our nests, names, locations, what those nests are on, whether it's a utility pole, tree, nest platform, whatever it is. So all of those nests will shortly be added. And once you're on our page, you will click Join Group here. It will then say you are now a member of this group, and it has been added to your dashboard. So now, every time you log into Osprey Watch, you will be able to just click right from your dashboard into our group. Like I said, I know this is a little complicated, but we're all learning this together, and I will be sending out the recorded version with all the instructions. So now, if we want to see our nests and submit observations on our nests, from our dashboard, we'll have to scroll down on this page. And it will then list all of our nests on our group page. And we only have 19, I think I said in here right now. But all those will be added soon. And you can either scroll, or the much easier way is there is a search bar here where you can enter the name of your nest and find it. But let's do a little practice. Let's say we just went out and we visited the Beavertail Road Nest West nest down there in Jamestown by Beavertail State Park. I think that's over by Mackerel Cove, actually. So what you would do is you'd find your nest and click Check Nest. And it will then ask you for time tracking. So an important note here is this is asking for the time that you went out and did the monitoring, not the time that you're submitting the observation. The reason I say that is because I admit I might be the #1 offender of doing this, where, I'll be out monitoring, a few weeks, I'll have all my observations written out on paper, and then, I might forget to add them online. So what I would do is I would then write, my time tracking for the actual time I did this observation, even if it's a few weeks later. And then you will click Launch Nest Check. And now it will ask for what we saw. It'll ask for the number of adults, 0, 1, or 2. It's very rare to see more than that in a nest. I've never heard of multiple adults or more than 2 adults in a nest at a time. But if that happens, you could write that in the notes. It will then ask for the number of eggs, number of young. So let's say we saw no eggs, no young, we click no, no. And then this optional note, you can write anything that you saw that might not have been answered. And that includes, those behaviors we talked about earlier. But let's use some test data. Let's say we saw 1 adult. We would click 1. And then let's say, so here's one thing I did not mention. If we see incubation, you have to click yes to eggs. Even though we're not specifically seeing eggs, we don't get up close and personal with these birds. We're observing from afar, either from below the nest or with binoculars most frequently, or even a spotting scope. But it will let you check off this box that says incubation observed. So if you see incubation, you click yes to eggs. And then it will ask you about young. Let's say we saw some young, we'd click yes. How many did we see? We have the option unknown, 1, 2, 3, or 4. If there's more than 4, I'd be very shocked. Again, it's typically maybe we'll have 1, maybe 2 nests per season out of the hundreds we monitor that will have 4 young. And it will ask if you observe feeding, like we talked about, the adult feeding young. And it will also say, were those young birds laying down or were they standing erect? And we can add an optional note. And I said, I observed 1 nestling poking its head out from the nest. I believe that the adult in the nest is incubating another egg. So that note section can really give some more context to what you're seeing. So you then click submit at the bottom, and it will say, thank you. Your nest check has been recorded. And you can either go to your dashboard from here or return to nest. If you click return to nest, it will bring you to this nest's profile page. And the way I think of Osprey Watch is like Osprey Facebook, where in our group, each of these nests has its own profile. And in this nest profile, you can see all of the observations of the nest made by yourself or by other people as well. And it will say their nicknames. That's why I said keep it appropriate. Others watching. So here, this is me, Lincoln Dark, ASRI. It'll say this nest is affiliated with Rhode Island Monitoring Group. It will show you a map of exactly where this nest is. And here's a really cool part, where it says 2025 season data. It will actually, Osprey Watch will pull the data from all of those questions that we just answered to say, well, when did we first see egg laying? When did we first see incubation? When did we first see hatchlings and fledglings? And if you scroll down, which I did not screenshot for this training, I apologize, it'll actually say the exact observations from each of these. So then we go back to our dashboard, which you can get to anytime by clicking this Osprey Watch button at the top. So now, none of us, I'll admit, I'm not a pro with Osprey Watch. I'm still learning this. We're all learning this together. So, but there is a section full of helpful videos for us learners. So from your dashboard, along the top, if you click on this help button, it will bring you to what they call Nestflix video tutorials, which I find very clever, Nestflix. And each of these videos are between 1 to 3 minutes, all about, how to do different things in Osprey Watch, like performing nest checks or joining groups. So I know I threw a lot at you, But now we're going to get into nest selection, which is how do we determine which nest or group of nests we'd like to monitor. So to view our nest map, that's the first thing you'll have to do, is you'll go to your dashboard, and then you can click on our group here, and it will bring you to our group page. And from our map, you can then click on this little square here, and it will expand the map to be your whole screen. And if you need to, you can click the escape key in the top left of your keyboard to exit out of this at any time. I only say that because actually I made this my full screen the other day, and I spent 5 or 10 minutes actually trying to figure out how to make it go away. Not my proudest moment, but I persevered. So then from here, we can zoom in and click on any of these orange dots for more information. For example, let's say we zoom in on Bristol. If you're local to Bristol, this area may look very familiar to you. As I said, not all of the nests are in the system yet. They will be any day now. But for now, we have these 4 in this area. So if we click on one, for example, up here, this is the Colt State Park 2 nest on the tree. And then we could click View Nest Details. And that's how we get to this Osprey profile page. And then from here, we can determine, is this nest near my house? Is it near my office? Is this going to be, the right nest for me? But an important note is that right now, there's not a formal way to claim an Osprey nest and Osprey watch. You will have to email me the name of the nest or group of nests that you'd like to monitor. So that will be at ldark@asri.org. I will be emailing you all after this meeting as well with all the follow-up information. So you'll have my email address from that or from the emails I sent out prior to this training. But if you have an incidental observation of a nest that you're not regularly monitoring, you can still submit it through that nest's profile. The more data, the better. And if you have monitored with us in the past, you may be familiar with an old term that we don't use anymore called just passing through. So that's if, I live up here in Providence. Let's say I go down for a nice beach day in Narragansett, and I see a nest, and I see that copulation. That data should still be submitted, even though it's not the nest that, is quote unquote mine. So I would still send in that observation of that Narragansett nest I saw, because we really want to know that data. So the next thing is submitting new nests. So let's say, I'm out monitoring my nest, and I see a nest at being built, or one I know hasn't been active in the past in a brand new spot. And we have dozens of these every year. So there's a really good chance you'll come across this. And to submit a new nest, you'll do is you'll email me directly with the location of any nest. Photos are very useful. You don't need to give me exact GPS coordinates as long as it's approximate location. I can likely find it on the map. At my day job, I actually work for the city of Providence as a spatial analyst, and I use very, very high resolution satellite imagery. It's actually so good as I can zoom in on the landscape and see osprey nests and find where they are. So it's pretty neat. But through that, I can really exactly place nests. So here's an example of a email. This is me emailing myself that I found a nest. The subject, I found a new nest. I said, "Hi, Lincoln. When I was out monitoring, I saw a nest that is not on the map. It is on a utility pole, and that's what we want to know. We want to know what it's on. So utility pole, nest pole, tree, what have you, and the location. It's on the corner of Point Judith Road and Clark Road in Narragansett. That's Lincoln." And I included a photo to show where this nest is. So this is a perfect email. It's saying what this nest is on, where it is, and a photo. This is all great. So now the long-awaited questions and open discussion. If you have a question or something you'd like to share, please put it in the chat. I'll read through all of the questions one by one. We won't leave here today until everything is answered. Let me open up this chat and see if there's any questions. Yes, osprey-watch.org is the URL. Sean says, when I was clearing out my grandmother's house near Wayland Square in 1996, I found DDT shelf paper and cans of DDT powder that was supposed to be sprinkled on carpets. Sean, that is an incredible story. It's really interesting. It goes to show, back in the past, people just didn't know, maybe what was great, what was in the past, or what was, appropriate to use in the past. But wow, that's such an interesting relic.
It was
And
scary. I had
yeah,
to take it all to the Eco Depot. It was absolutely terrifying. I was like, oh my gosh. Oh,
yeah, I wouldn't even know what the first thing to do is with that. Gosh, I'd be, grabbing a mask.
terrible.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great story. Jesse asks, how many brood will Osprey have per season? And so, how many sets of eggs will they lay? And they will only lay one brood per season. Uh, it's very, very rare in general for Osprey to have multiple broods. Typically, in general for birds, we only see multiple sets of eggs in much warmer climates, like around the equator. But we won't see that here. And we see, so all monitoring reports will be done via Osprey Watch. The field note sheet is for our own use. Yes, I believe I shared the uh, field note sheet with all of you. It's a PDF or Word document, and that's totally optional for your own use. I like to print them out. It includes a checklist of the breeding activities we talked about, just to kind of remember what you're looking for. And then if you do use that, you will have to then transcribe that into Osprey Watch. Great. When do we reach out to claim a nest? Will that be once all nests are uploaded to the site? So Ariel, it's a great question. I will actually be sending out to everyone our legacy map. This is the map we've used for many years. It's on our asri.org website. It's a Google map that includes all 400 or so of our nests, and you'll be able to go through that in the meantime while we're waiting for all the other nests to be added to Osprey Watch. That's a great question, and I thank you for reminding me. Steve asks, what do you do about adults if there are intruders? Well, we do typically, this is a great question, Steve, because we are seeing a great amount of osprey growth in our population, Rhode Island, meaning that these nests are becoming more and more dense. Our hotspots are in South Kingstown and then another one in the Barrington, Bristol, and Warren area. And oftentimes, when nests become more and more dense, the males in these general groups or colonies, even though they're not technically colonies, there's areas of high nesting density, is the males will start to harass each other. And oftentimes, you'll have a group of males that are harassing a pair of osprey so much that they may kill them, unfortunately, or make it so that pair that's being harassed can't successfully raise young because they're spending more time defending their nest than they are out foraging. So, that is a natural balance on the osprey, or check and balance of the osprey population. That's not something, we interfere with. That is grim, but, that is the circle of life and nature in action. Fortunately, it is, even though it's, morose, it is a product of a very healthy and growing osprey population. So thank you for a great question, Steve. And Gary says, are there pictures of each nest on Osprey Watch? If not, do you want them? So Gary, it's a great question. I'm still confirming with their webmaster if there is a photo upload section on Osprey Watch. So there might not be photos yet. If there is a photo upload section, I'll be adding our folder of historical photos that I have onto there. Are there certain nests that tend to be ignored, or any guidance about which nests need to be watched? So in general, a lot of folks, if you're returning, if you want to monitor your same nest, just let me know. But we don't ever have, or in the past couple of years, since I started coordinating this in 2023, we don't have many nests that are totally ignored. And that's because, first, we have a great growing number of volunteers, but also if there are nests that don't have full year monitors, we actually do an optional little program in the last couple weeks of July where we go out and folks can sign up to do a one-time visit to nests that don't have regular season monitors, just to see, are there any young we're missing? I believe last year there was maybe 20 or 25 nests that didn't have monitors, and we ended up with only a handful that we end up really not getting to. So nest coverage isn't really an issue, but it's a great question. If the parent pair comes back to their nest, where do fledglings go the following year? That's a great question. And so typically for osprey, the fledglings come back and nest within 40 miles of the nest that they hatched in, which in Rhode Island could truly be anywhere, or it could even be Massachusetts or Connecticut. But in larger areas, like we were talking about Colorado, that is actually, relative to the size of their state, pretty close to their parents. But it's typically within 40 miles. Teresa, thank you for the kudos. And what happens if the nests I want to monitor are claimed by someone else? Penny, that's another great question. So I tell folks multiple monitors on a single nest is great. And the reason for that is because having multiple monitors on a single nest greatly increases the quality of our data, because we're having more total time of eyes on that nest. And if folks have conflicting observations, I can step in, connect with both monitors, figure out exactly what's going on. So, there's no being territorial about nests. So my goal is to have multiple monitors for every single nest, which is a big goal. Hasn't happened yet, but maybe we can this year. But, if, let's say, for example, we already have 3 monitors on a nest, I may ask, folks who want to sign up for that after to maybe look at some nearby nests, and I'll provide a list. I don't actually have our nest sign up or our nest assignment sheet publicly available. And that's because that's also where all of everyone's contact information is. And I just don't want all of your email addresses or phone numbers we've provided that to be available to everyone. So anyway, to answer your question, there aren't many scenarios where your nest would be claimed and unable to monitor. And Steve says, I was asking about the number being limited to 2. Steve, do you mind rewording your question? I'm not sure if I understand. And David says, at one of our recreation fields here in South Kingstown, on top of one of the baseball light stations, has been removed after last season. Will they be likely to return this year? So David, that's another great question. So osprey, like I said, they have high nest site fidelity, meaning they love to come back to the exact same nest site year after year. But there are cases, where folks or agencies, private landowners, will get permits to legally remove nests in the off season, perhaps, if they're on a chimney, if they're on maybe lights in this case. If, let's say the recreation field, let's say the Parks Department, if they put up measures to deter osprey, such as bird spikes or traffic cones is a very common one you might see around. It's kind of unlikely. They might try to nest there, but it probably won't be successful. So they'd go nest somewhere else. But if the nest was removed and there are no deterrents, it is very likely that they'll be back to return this year. And Donna says, we need more nest poles in a lot of areas for the overwhelming fledglings that are returning. So can you help with this? You help with contact on the groups. Donna, great question. So we actually do not install or maintain nest poles. Audubon does maintain the nest poles on their own properties, but we do not have the budget to install or erect them. Actually, we do have a great guide written in that by volunteers and is on the asri.org/osprey website about how to install a osprey nest pole yourself. But that isn't something that we actively do. If there's a nest pole in disrepair on a private property, I do try and get in contact with the landowner. Most of the time, this is with Rhode Island Energy, because they do have so many nest poles. They have osprey nesting poles. They also have their utility poles. And Rhode Island Energy is a great collaborator of ours. They really care about osprey, because for them, if they can prevent an osprey from, nesting on a transformer and causing damage, that's prevent, and maybe they put a nest pole nearby, that provides a home for osprey and provides a big headache from them, for having to help with power outages or damage in general. And Steve says the recording system is limited to 2 adults. What if if there's an intruder? Steve, great question. Thank you for clarifying there. If there's more than 2 adults, that'd be very unusual, but that's where you could include that in that text section at the bottom, the extra comments, just anything that doesn't really fit from the buttons, just right in that extra comments area, and we'll be able to see that. Thank you, Steve. And Doris says Eldridge Field in East Greenwich also has new lighting. Thank you for letting us know. I'll mark that down in the record. So if there's any more questions. Steve says, this year, I observed osprey on Rabbit Island reusing last year's nesting material. How common is that? And Rabbit Island's down there in North Kingstown, I believe, by the Wilson Park. And see, that's a pretty common. Oftentimes, if there's still any remnants of the nest from the previous year, they will come back, use it, but they will build on it typically, just to reinforce it there. But they will use material from the previous year. Dara says the East Greenwich American Legion post has ravens that created a nest on the bottom platform of the cell tower. The osprey had a nest on the very top of the cell tower. Will the ravens interfere? It's a great question. I notice I've been saying great question all of these. They are all great questions. Typically, corvids, the family of birds that are crows, ravens, jays, magpies, even though we don't have magpies out here, do harass raptors. So they may actually impact that. We had one situation, I believe this is on Rose Hill Road in South Kingstown. I think it was crows or ravens built a nest on a cell tower where there were osprey. They did actually harass them to the point of those osprey weren't able to nest there. So that is unfortunate, but that is nature. And we have one, seems like a lot of nests are very small now. How big do the nests need to be for successful hatches? That is a good question, but I don't actually know the answer for that, of how nest size impacts nest success. So I'd have to do a little more research and get back to everyone on that. Any more questions? Well, thank you, Sam, for the kudos. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. If you think of any questions after today, don't worry, email me anytime, and I will always be on the email. I typically check it once a day, sometimes once every other day. But anyway, folks, I will be sending out this recording and many more resources this evening. But again, thank you all for joining us, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.